One of the key things I feel like when you're telling Civico's story so far, how Civico adapts to all the trends that are going on at the time with Govtech, and what do you see in the future coming up? What are the tech trends and how is Civico responding to them?
So some of the things that are important to councils, which we have included, is the new legislation that's coming down the line for hybrid meetings, certainly for full council hybrid meetings, and also proxy voting, whereby you will be able to have a vote, not only for yourself, but if there was somebody for whom you were a proxy, you would be able to give that vote. And for the first time, and it's a radical shift in committee meetings, which most people seem to be overlooking, but it's absolutely a seismic shift in the way that we do democracy in this country. And that is, until now, you have had to be in the room in order to cast a vote. So now, when the legislation comes through, you'll be able to vote remotely as well as on site. And that is, if we just stop and think about that, that is a major, major shift. And it also requires a major shift in the technology. Because as I described earlier on, if you are squeezing the room to a single pipe, you can't unsqueeze it once you've condensed it to a single feed. So if you squeeze the room before you send it out to remote participants, you can't then get remote participants to cast a vote and have that travel its way back into the meeting because you've already condensed, you've distilled what was happening in the room. So you now need a completely different technology architecture to make that work. And thankfully, with the support of Microsoft, we've been able to do that. So that's really important. But then you have other issues, thinking about meetings have to be quorate, particularly when there's a vote involved, because all meetings are trying to achieve one thing: change in the lives of local residents through a vote. So the vote is the purpose of that meeting. Its intention is to move the lives forward, to move forward the lives of local people, and we do that through votes. But you have to know when the meeting is quorate. Now, if you've got a certain amount of people who are in different locations or they are remote, you've now got to verify using a quorum checker. So sophisticated technology has to work out, is there somebody genuinely behind that laptop at home who was purporting to be following along the agenda item? The chair has to know if somebody was not there for the full duration of that agenda item, so she or he can make a decision as to whether that person is entitled to vote on that agenda item or not. In other words, they have to have a full grasp of the item in order to be able to cast a vote. And that's the prerogative of the chair. But we have to support the chair to say this meeting is quorate and all of the people who are about to cast a vote have genuinely been in the agenda item for the full duration. Other issues which are coming in, which are really, really important, and it kind of takes away a lot of the debate about the YouTube and the Vimeo and all those kind of platforms. And that is the C2P, which is basically the Coalition for the Authentication and the Validation of Media Content. So we're able to digitally sign a video, which means that it is against a international standard that the video is authenticated, and we sign that off. And that means when it travels out of the system, and let's say it goes to YouTube or somebody takes it and it goes off to Vimeo or whatever it is, if they disturb that video, it will no longer carry a digital authentication provenance certification. So we apply that certification under international standards. It sits there embedded into the video and it then can go. So we now live in a world of fake news. So the only way that you can get away from fake news, where you can't distort what somebody said in a meeting, is to make sure that your media content is digitally signed, authenticated for its provenance. That is, it sounds like a small thing, but going forward, that is going to be absolutely enormous. So in this country, it's been driven by the BBC, who are an advocate of that particular process. We've certainly signed up to that as a process, and that's coming through into the new platforms that we're bringing out. So it's in already, and so it means that when people are looking at council content on their own branded website, as well as a derivative, which goes to YouTube, it goes to wherever, it has been digitally signed. And that is it's a subtle technology shift, but it's really important. But if you also take into account the local government reorganization, where we're now going to have very large councils who may have more than one chamber. They may have 3 or 4 separate civic buildings. So the system that we've brought forward allows you to connect multiple chambers or multiple committee rooms anywhere in the world and bridge them together and make them operate as one single system. So the system simply doesn't care whether 50 of you are in, I don't know, Westminster and another 50 are in Kathmandu. More likely is the case if you've got somewhere like Hampshire councils, so they've got mid-Hampshire councils coming together. They may be in a scenario where they don't have a meeting room which is big enough to accommodate everybody, and they're going to need to use 2 or 3 different buildings. So they need a piece of technology which will allow the microphones, regardless of what they are. So each of these 3 venues, for argument's sake, would have different microphones, different cameras, different display screens, etc. But having a single piece of software which can bring all of those things into the one meeting system, and so that the council can just manage that meeting as if everybody was in one single building. In other words, we put a ring fence around them and we turn them into one meeting. And then you layer on top of that remote attendees of however many unlimited amounts of meeting attendees, and being able to push all of that content onto a single feed, onto each council's own branded website, and for council democratic service officers not to have to do anything. By virtue of the fact that you've put that information into modern.gov, all of the other side of it, this is what they would call an industrial Internet of Things system, where everything is being forced to talk to everything. And although it sounds very grandiose and it sounds very complicated, don't tell anybody, it's actually getting easier and easier. So all the cameras are now single cable, all the microphones are now digital, all of the display screens are being made to be digital, all of the audio which gets installed into the ceilings, the room audio reinforcement, they're now single cable, Cat6, IP speakers. The whole thing has become very, very streamlined. And what was missing was a piece of software in the middle to bring all of these things together. Something that people don't talk about during COVID and after COVID, and still to this day, there's a price to be paid for stress. So a lot of democratic service officers have undergone an enormous transformation in their job over those last, since 7 years. So before that, it was already a strained, difficult job, but very doable. But then they've gone through this technology transformation, workplace, work practice transformation. That was hugely stressful. And those guys, like champions, they kept those meetings going come what may. They've made the transition after COVID, but a lot of them have been using the same system and just making it work. And we've now got to a point where I saw soccer team put out some really good reports about what is the efficiency cost of working with legacy systems. And although councils don't have much in the way of money to change all of this infrastructure, they've now got to the point that it's costing them more money to keep a lot of the legacy systems than it is to change. And what we're trying to do is to work with system integrators who are the professionals at designing and installing these systems, to support them to make sure that they do what they do and they do it best, but they have got a software package that can bring all of these things together in a simple fashion. And it's like webcasting. Because we can now webcast without any extra equipment whatsoever, and you can now make webcasting a completely background peripheral activity, where when you come to a part 2, you just pause the webcast and it pauses. And then when the part 2 is finished, you just unpause and it carries on. And at the end of the meeting, it processes itself and it loads itself up as on demand. And it's got 220 community languages, and it's time stamped and it's indexed and all the rest of it. All of that happens as a digital background process. Officers should not be having to get involved in that. I think the other key thing that we've managed to do that's important to councils is there was a need to introduce an AI minute maker. So AI will never do your minutes for you, not in a million years. It will do 80% of the work, but you always need a human being to go in there and finish it off. But the problem was that we were challenged with is that officers were saying to us that whenever they tried to use ChatGPT or Copilot, it was basically hallucinating and injecting non-fact into their committee meeting minutes. So we built a system where every word is indexed in a meeting. So you can find and click on any word and it'll jump you to that point in the video. But more importantly, we put into the sausage machine your past 2 years or 3 years of committee meeting minutes. So we then know what the formula is. And then we get our system with a highly accurate transcription to create the minutes of those meetings, which can be expanded or contracted as you might need or want. And you get that to a certain point, and then the human being goes in and does the last mile, the last 20%, because we all know that because AI cannot read the room, and providing you've prevented it from hallucinating, you can then get a really accurate, very reasonable set of draft minutes, and then the human being can go in and just finalize that. But it strips out the work from X amount of hours. Well, we would suggest it's going to be definitely 60, 70, 80% of the workload removed. And that's what I meant earlier on when I said that the efficiency saving, the cost saving is not in the technology. The cost saving is giving officers back their time and actually, I would argue, probably more importantly, reducing the amount of stress and the cognitive load that they were carrying for many, many years. And even now, it's still not out of the system. But we have to recognize the stress that officers have been under through the use of these different technologies. It's easy. We just say it as a word in this flipping podcast. But actually, if you've gone home with a migraine, if you've had to take time off through workplace stress, it's not funny, and it can have lifetime impact on your home life, on your work life, your career aspirations.
Thanks for sharing, Daniel. I think now the show is powered by Civico. Now people have some context for Civico.
Well, hopefully it's just the beginning, because one of the things I realized is I wanted to play my part in our community. So I do make it my business to go and find out what technologies are out there, what's going to be useful. Sometimes we hope to get it right. Occasionally we get it wrong. But the new technologies that are coming down, we want to be able to utilize that. And I'm hoping that this becomes a vehicle that we can introduce people like the microphone manufacturers, the camera manufacturers. What's the perspective of democratic service officers? So hopefully we'll have a few coming on. We've got Sam, I think, coming on at some point, Sam Ball from Oadby and Wigston. So he's going to come and join us. And there's a few other heads of democratic services and other members from the team who are going to be here. And of course, we're going to be hopefully doing the live webcast from the ADSO conference this year. You didn't know about that, did you, Helena? So you know about it now.
Preparing myself.
You do prepare yourself, because it will be fun. It's always fun. This year it's in Warwick, and I think we are sponsoring some parts of the event, so that'll be good. So the whole point of this is just to have, in a way, it's like a cafe forum, just a light-hearted view on different aspects of the life of a democratic service officer and the things that impact on their work life. Yeah. So,
and we'll be back next week on next Thursday. There was a live premiere on LinkedIn, so if anyone wants to join and have discussions in the chat there about anything, that would be great.
Yeah, or if you happen to want to come on the podcast, you could also just drop us a line.
To get in touch.
That'd be good. Yeah.